give us a background as into what International Sweet Potato Center does.
Our primary work is on two crops. The potato, or sometimes what's called Irish potato here in Africa, which comes from the Solanum family, and sweet potato, which is a totally different crop, which comes from the Ipomoea family. Those are our two main crops, but we also work on the Andean roots and tubers, which are lesser known crops that come from the Andes. And our headquarters is in Lima, Peru, where one of our most important tasks is to maintain the germplasm for the world of these two important crops. So as you know, they're vegetatively propagated, so we have to keep them in tissue culture and then grow them out periodically to maintain their status and quality. So it's a huge mandate. We have, I think, over 4,000 varieties of sweet potato and over 3,000 varieties of potato in our germplasm bank.
Oh, wow, it's good to learn. I didn't know there are so many varieties of sweet potatoes. And I would want to know, there's a lot of concentration on and a lot of conversation in regards to how we promote production, but we are not specifying we are not specifying the kind of foods that we want to produce in mass. We just want to concentrate on making our farms more productive. How do we shift this conversation into, producing more food which is more nutritious? Who needs to be involved?
Well, one of the themes that's really underlying the AGRF this year is the importance of food systems and how the digital technologies will link different components of that food system, from the farmer all the way to the plate, and even afterwards, how do we handle the waste? And how those digital technologies can help make it more efficient. But really, at the end of the day, our food system needs nutritious foods. And we also need foods that are environmentally sensitive. And if you look at the roots and tubers in general, they're much more water use efficient than the grain crops. And if I can focus in on the crop I work on, sweet potato, really you need a lot less water to grow a crop of sweet potato than you do to grow a crop of rice or wheat. Moreover, sweet potato gives a lot of energy output per unit area, per unit time. We have varieties of potato and sweet potato that are ready in 3 to 4 months, right? How long do you wait for your maize crop? I know they're breeding for early maturity, but we have these early maturing varieties that often can fit in and really help people get through the hunger season. And your sweet potato, the orange ones in particular, are extremely rich in provitamin A. So just one small root meets the daily vitamin A needs of a young child. And then it has all sorts of other vitamins like vitamin C, E, and K, and several B vitamins, and minerals. So what we want to do is encourage a food system and go to scale with the food system with our more nutritious foods. And one of the things that we're trying to do is combat the image that predominates in many countries of sub-Saharan Africa, that sweet potato is a food of the poor. You probably grew up hearing that, right? You're gwashi in Kenya. And why is that? And so because of marketing, because of promotions, people think, for example, bread is modern. Certainly bread is very convenient. But you're much better off having a sweet potato for breakfast, as you probably did when you were growing up as part of your tradition. And you'll notice when you have a sweet potato for breakfast instead of bread, you don't get hungry by 10 o'clock. That is because sweet potato has a lot of dietary fiber. So you digest it more slowly than bread, right? And you also are getting all those extra vitamins and minerals, etc. So in a sense, it's getting people to recognize that some of our traditions were actually very healthy. And then if we add on, you use the orange varieties, you get the vitamin A. Unfortunately, the white varieties, the traditional white varieties, don't have any provitamin A. So we're encouraging this marginal change by promoting the orange flesh types, and then at the same time saying this is a healthy food for all classes of people. So even when you go up in economic status, you actually should be eating your sweet potato, your orange flesh sweet potato, for good health. And then, of course, we're encouraging its marketing and transformation for wealth as well. And you'll even notice during the past decade in the United States, as the health benefits of sweet potato have been recognized, the per capita consumption of orange flesh sweet potato has doubled in the United States over the past decade. So increasingly, people are becoming aware, hey, this is a healthy food. And you know, that tradition of just associating it with times of hunger, sweet potato is known in Africa as the crop that is there when the maize fails. So it's associated with these times of, well, only my sweet potato is growing. But think about that with our climate change problems that are happening. Sweet potato is going to become more important in the food system, and fortunately, it's a very nutritious alternative.
I grew up knowing that sweet potato was indeed a drought-resistant crop, but it wasn't as popular as you have pointed out. It's actually associated in a lot of our areas. It's actually associated with poverty. How do we change that perception? Do you foresee a time when sweet potato will replace consumption of things like maize, wheat, which are more popular? And do you think the smallholder farmer will stand to make as much from sweet potatoes as they do from maize and things like rice and wheat?
Well, first of all, from the production standpoint, sweet potato makes you a lot more profit than maize, even now in places like Kenya. Just because the labor inputs tend to be lower, you have many fewer disease problems, and you can get high, like I said, high yields per unit area, per unit time, especially compared to maize. And sweet potato does well on marginal soils. So you can grow it on your more soils that are less rich in nutrients. Maize requires a lot more nutrients to get a halfway decent crop than sweet potato does. Now, all crops need nutrients, so at some point you have to put something back into the soil through rotation and rotation with legumes, which is what we recommend for the sweet potato. But I do think the transformation of interest in sweet potato will come in two ways. One, people are becoming increasingly concerned about health and the potential for diabetes. So again, it's a medium glycemic index crop, and it has all this dietary fiber and good vitamins. So I think from the health perspective, that's how we're promoting the orange fleshed, as being a healthy food for all. But it will take education and campaigns, and then we recognize that urban consumers want convenient foods. So our other entry point is improving the quality of the bread on the market, and we can take steamed and mashed sweet potato, which we call orange flesh sweet potato puree, and replace anywhere from 30% to 50% of the wheat flour in many baked products, like bread. And this makes a lot of sense, both from the nutrition standpoint, because we're putting additional vitamin A into the product. Actually, the bread is beautiful. It turns into golden color. Our consumer tests show that people prefer the orange flesh sweet potato bread to the 100% wheat flour bread. And when you think about it, most African countries have to import some or all of their wheat flour. In 2016, Sub-Saharan Africa spent $4.1 billion importing wheat or wheat flour. Any class of farmer can grow sweet potato, from the smallest to the largest. So to me, it's one of these, what I call no-brainer interventions. If we can make a better quality bread, using and substituting 30 to 50% of the wheat flour with a crop that most African smallholders can grow, we've got a win-win from the economic side of saving foreign exchange, and we're creating markets for our farmers instead of creating markets for wheat farmers from other countries.
True. This year's AGRF is all about growing digitally. Are there some technologies that already exist that would help the continent in the promotion, production and consumption, and even storage of a product like sweet potatoes?
I think I've learned a lot at the AGRF. We've been looking into this at the International Potato Center. What's the best way forward? And as you know, having our regional office based in Nairobi, Kenya, we're in the hub of digital technology development. But I think the challenge organizations like us face is which one is the right one for our crop. Because we would really love to see better linkages where farmers have better linkages to getting their seed, and farmers have better linkages for where they can market their output. Because we have seen that farmers are very responsive. When they know there's a market, they're more willing to invest in quality inputs, and really they will respond to that market opportunity by growing more of the crop that's being demanded. So really what we want to do is more investment in demand creation campaigns. We often see people say, we can't find this on the market when we want it. Getting it into more of the informal market structures in the big cities, and really doing these, what we call educational campaigns on the health benefits of sweet potato, and really other traditional foods and healthy foods. Because really, as you don't want to inherit the broken system from the West. Because it's very costly. Somebody from the Rockefeller Foundation in one of the panels said, the current food system is breaking the health system. If you look at the costs in the US now of non-communicable disease treatment due to poor diet, you can avoid that if you start taking the steps and really working with communities to let them know about the value of many of their traditional foods like sweet potato, and really encouraging the consumption of high beta-carotene orange flesh sweet potato, because beta-carotene is really something that's essential for a strong immune system. The vitamin A is really important for helping you fight disease, and really beta-carotene is also an antioxidant which helps in cancer prevention. So we need to be eating more of these nutrition foods, and sweet potato is one that can contribute a lot to that.
I love the contribution of women to the whole conversation of income generation in agriculture when it comes to decision making at home in regards to what we consume. How do we ensure that the women that we have across Africa are making the right decisions in terms of the diet that they provide for the family, or the foods that they grow on their farms? How do we promote the growth of a crop like sweet potatoes, especially or specifically among the women?
Very good question. In East and Southern Africa in particular, sweet potato is seen or is viewed to be a women's crop. And a lot of the work we do when we promote the vitamin A-rich sweet potato is in conjunction with what we call a nutrition education campaign or a behavioral change campaign to inform people about it, and also bring in other nutrition lessons so people know which foods to combine it with to get the maximum benefit for the family, and particularly for the young children who are most at risk of vitamin A deficiency. But we've learned a lot in doing that. Sure, women are the caretakers of the kitchen, but in many settings, men decide how the land is used. So in our educational campaigns, we also reach out to the men and get them involved. We also reach out to what we call other influencers, like the mother-in-laws, because they actually determine what the young child gets sometimes, particularly when the mother is young. So really, it takes a whole household. And we have to be able to work with the people who are deciding how the land is used. So it's very important to take a full household approach to talking about nutrition, because we found actually men are very interested in their nutrition as well. And they have a lot of influence on how money is spent on healthy foods. The other entry point that we do in setting up value chaining when we're promoting market development is to set targets. To work with our partners in development to say, actually, we have to set targets, because when there's an income opportunity emerging in many settings, the men will come forward and dominate. So if you don't set exact targets that you must include, for example, in Rwanda, we had a project to develop a biscuit with a private sector company that has 43% of the wheat flour replaced with the orange flesh sweet potato. And in that case, we set a target from the outset. 75% of the farmers linked to that agroprocessor must be women. And so people had to change their thinking when they were going out recruiting. Who are we going to recruit? Who are we going to link into these farmer associations or get the association to accept additional members? So we make sure the women were there. And in some cases, particularly for the more vulnerable farmer association groups that had a lot of women that might be female-headed households, we learned that we had to do more training to make sure they would have the quality routes and the quality production cycles to be linked to the market. So it may take more effort, but the women really benefited economically from this, from their households. So it's not a passive thing. It just won't happen automatically. You have to be proactive in saying, how are we going to make sure that women are not excluded when we commercialize? Because it's very easy for them to be excluded if you aren't paying attention.